it was just incredible that the work that she has done on behalf of the club in getting our name out. And so I want to make sure that we also as a club acknowledge not only her, we have the committee members, which were Ellen Davis, it was Ann, Kathy Triola, and myself, but also the other folks who supported us, which are the Center for the Arts, right? They voluntarily let us come into their exhibit and helped us set that up. Courtyard Suites for the on-camera, the Union, and Ubinet, who all got the word out about this club and our exhibition. So please, please, if you're in those businesses, stop in and just say thank you on behalf of the Nevada County Camera Club. Much appreciated, right? And I would say a round of applause. Everybody who was a part of Photography Month, raise your hand. See, look at this, great engagement. So we'll see if we'll do it again, but this time we're just taking a little breather for a little bit as April transitions into May. All right, so the next I'm going to announce, I'd mentioned before about a potential flea market, and the board talked about it, and the idea is you bring items that you would like to sell or give away, photography related. And if you've ever been to the one in Action Camera in Roseville, it's very simple. You either set out a little card table, open the trunk of your car or your hatchback of your SUV, and people wander by and decide if there's something of interest to them, and then you make the final deal with those folks. So the board approved of that event, and so we targeted our June meeting, which is June 27th. And the idea is come a little bit early, set up here in the parking lot, 4 to 4:30. From 4:30 to 5:30, folks can wander around and see what you have to offer and see if they'd like to buy or take something, and then come on into the meeting. So mark your calendars for June's flea market. And the last announcement, I'm going to pass the mic to Sheila Ryan. And Sheila, if you would come up and talk about our next exhibition. Right, so set up between 4 and 4:30, opens 4:30 to 5:30. So come on up, Sheila.
Bob Ogden is not here? Okay. Bob and I co-chair the exhibitions committee. That's a new positions. And Bob has been busy with family matters and can't be here. But we have a show which has been, let's see, there was a call for art issued. A lot of people responded. We have 16 beautiful images that will be displayed at the Edward Jones Conference Room. That's Edward Jones at 580 Brunswick, Suite 200. There will be a reception on May 6th, and I hope that a lot of you will come out. Edward Jones is inviting their clientele and will provide refreshments. I guess that's it.
And again, big thank you to Sheila Ryan and Bob Ogden for stepping into very big shoes set by Ellen Davis and Dave McClellan as our exhibition coordinators. So thank you to them. So with that, any other announcements this evening? Okay, all right. With that, I will turn it over to Kathy Trailer, our Vice President.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, thanks, Rachel. She needs a big round of appreciation because she is spearheaded Photography Month and has done an amazing job just keeping all the pieces together. What a great administrator she's been. So before I introduce our presenter tonight, I just want to remind those of you who have pieces in our Grass Valley Courtyard Suites photo challenge that this Friday is sadly the end. So I need you to be there between 10 and 12 to pick up if you can. If you can't, I'll be taking them all back to my house and you can come by and visit with me and bring a little something with you, like a gift. No, it's just come by and just let me know, make arrangements, send me an email, call me, whatever you want to do, text, I'm available. And I'll let you know, Bob. So let me get to the business at hand. So our presenter tonight is Jason Bradley. He is coming to us courtesy of Zoom. Jason wants to come up and visit us, but it's a little far. He's coming in from Carmel, Pacific Grove, where he has a business there. We're very happy he's joining us. He is the owner of Bradley Photographic and Bradley Print Services, located at his gallery on the Monterey Peninsula in Central California. Jason's expertise in nature and underwater photography, but he's well-versed in studio lighting, portraiture, commercial photography, and all aspects of modern digital workflow. Jason teaches hobbyists as well as seasoned professionals how to streamline their workflow. He leads field expeditions for photographers both underwater and above around the world. And Jason is the author of Creative Workflow in Lightroom, published by Focal Press. As well as he is a writer and a blogger for Outdoor Photographer magazine. So that may be where you recognize his name. Jason's print lab, Bradley Print Services, offers a variety of fine art printing solutions, including a unique way of making metal prints that offers better detail and archivability. So with that all said, when you go down to Carmel, do visit him at his shop, or he'll tell us if it's in Carmel or Pacific Grove, right? So I'd like to present Jason Bradley.
Jason, you need to unmute. There.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Kathy, for the introduction. Thank you all for having me. This is actually kind of exciting that we're doing this multimedia, I don't know what you call it, sort of presentation. This technology was only available to major television networks up until a few years ago, but here we are, satelliting me from across the state remotely. So anyway, thank you guys for having me here. Hopefully one day I can get out there and be with you all in person. Yeah, point of correction. My gallery, print lab, my home is in Pacific Grove. Pacific Grove is on the Monterey Peninsula, and it's the town that sits right in between Monterey and Carmel. Actually, you can even say in between Carmel, Pebble Beach, and Monterey. But it's on the edge of the Monterey Peninsula, and that's where I call home. And that's where my gallery is. So if any, I've already invited a couple of you out. So if any of you in the area taking photography, doing some photography, taking some landscapes, please come say hello and check out the gallery and what we do out here. I'm there most of the time, but if I'm not, I have a couple employees that are there as well. So you can come anytime. All right. That said, let me jump right in. I guess what I'm going to do here is I'm going to share my screen. And I don't know how question and answers work here with this remote stream here, but I would like for the ability of you guys to ask them either with whether or not you're on Zoom or whether or not you're there in person. I know there's a mic going around, so maybe what the thing to do is I'll pause here and there and find out if there's any questions. I kind of like the dialogue going back and forth with this stuff. In fact, I'll start with this. I spent about 4 or 5 hours yesterday kind of putting a presentation together, and I was going to talk about a lot of technical stuff about underwater photography. Kathy wanted me to talk about underwater photography. I could talk about all kinds of stuff, but this is what we're talking about today. And I spent a lot of time putting a presentation together that was technical and described, well, the technical side of underwater photography and what I do. And because it's a technical thing. But then I decided at the last minute, this is not what I want to do. I threw it out the window, and I really just thought it'd be more fun to put a bunch of slides together and me talk about what I do when I'm underwater, how much fun it is, the critters I experience, the wildlife I encounter, and tell some stories about well, some of these places that I get to go and visit and photograph. I thought that'd be more fun. So, but it won't work well unless you guys are chiming in. So feel free to do so, and I'll do my best to pause throughout. Okay. So let me share my screen here. And there you go. You guys can see my screen at this point, yes?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, let's start. Let's start with little old me. This is many years ago. This is actually me before I was a photographer. This is the beginnings of my interest in working with oceans. When I was in my late teens, I got an idea out of nowhere. I don't have stories of my childhood where I can talk about my dad taking me fishing and time on the boat and my interest in the oceans and fish and ocean wildlife started way back when. I was landlocked. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. I like skateboards. I like science fiction. I like stuff that had nothing to do with the ocean. So quite frankly, I have no idea where my interest in the oceans came, or where it came from, but it came late in my life, late in my teens, I should say. And I just one day decided I want to work with dolphins. And I decided to go to school and study marine biology. And with that, along came volunteer positions working in Santa Barbara. That's where I went to school for the Marine Mammal Rehab Center, the Natural History Museum, collecting data for marine mammal science, et cetera. And I created this lifestyle all around working on and in the oceans that I just deeply, deeply fell in love with. This is a picture of me on one of the expeditions that I did with, again, that Marine Mammal Rehab Center that I worked at. And one of the things that we did biannually, sometimes more than that, was we would go out and visit the Channel Islands in Central and Southern California. And our job there was to find marine mammals that were entangled in fishing nets, that had hooks in their mouths or just were sick. And our job was to capture them, cut the nets off, rehabilitate them as needed, and set them free. But one of the things that always was surrounding me in those days were cameras. Again, I had no interest in photography, but for whatever reason, marine mammals attracted videographers, photographers of all kinds, and there were cameras everywhere I went. One of the things that we did there is we would go up to the seal rookeries, and we'd find the candidate and find the marine mammal that had that fishing line, say, wrapped around their neck. And our job was to sneak up on them like this. And we'd have these nets in hand, these hoop nets with these deep socks in them. And we'd rush up to the seal rookery. There would be elephant seals or sea lions or different species of seals, right? We'd rush up to them and it was just chaos. They would start barking, they would start biting, they would start running as fast as they can away from the beach and back into the ocean. This is an example of a stampede coming right at me. And just rushing to get away. But we would, and here I'm being run over at this point. But once we got some that we had to bring them back to the rehabilitation center, we did it, and a lot of it in the director's backyard. We did some at a vet hospital. We did some at a barge that we had in the harbor. This is a photo of me, a ripe young age of 19, tube feeding a baby harbor seal with a friend who I still am in touch with today, Karen, who became a marine biology professor. Yeah, so baby harbor seal, had the tube feed it. Eventually we would teach the babies how to hunt on their own before letting them go back out into the water. But skip forward about 10 years after I decided I didn't want to do submarine science anymore. But I did want to maintain, again, that lifestyle that I said earlier that I fell in love with. That's working on and in the ocean, scuba diving, working with marine mammals, working hands-on with wildlife. Those kind of encounters I had to maintain. So then I had an idea of, well, if I don't want to do marine science, what will I do? So photography came to mind. Now it came to mind, now, I didn't have a background in photography, like I didn't have a background in oceans, but I wanted to use the photography as a way of exploiting this idea of continuing to work outside. So I did. Luckily, I fell in love with photography. But here's an image, long story short, here's an image of me going back and working with marine mammals, not as a student studying marine science, but as a photographer documenting it. This is one of the first big projects that I was commissioned to do as a photographer. These are satellite tags actually I take that back. These here, we're looking at our radio tags that scientists from UC Santa Cruz, just an hour north of where I currently live now, would put onto elephant seals at the rookery up at Año Nuevo to study them. And I was doing this as part of a project working with the Census of Marine Life. And their goal was to put satellite tags on various migratory animals around the Pacific Ocean and track their movements. On top of the elephant seal's head here, this is a satellite tag. Big, ugly animals. And when I say big, I mean big. They weigh as much as a small car. So they sedate them. They've got the scientists on the left on the ground with them is doing ultrasounds, collecting all kinds of data. Poor little guy. The female elephant seal there is not crying when they're on land. They naturally tear like that to extract salt from their body when they're on land. And there's one being weighed. Now, as weird as this might seem, rest assured that these animals does not harm them at all. And actually, when they come back to land, these are one of the only seals, actually this is the only seal that molts like a snake. Their skin actually sheds off. So they come back twice a year to the same rookeries to molt. And then when they do that, the satellite tag just literally falls off, even though they epoxy it to their heads. And then lots of fun. Was able to work with the same marine mammal lab and go down with them to San Benito Islands in southern Mexico and document some of the work they were doing to retrieve some of these satellite tags that they deployed in elephant seals down there. This is the place we stayed on one of the islands. There's 3 islands down there that we stayed. They're totally uninhabited, except for a small part of the year when a fishing group comes in and fishes around the island. Other than that, it's totally uninhabited. So when we were staying here, it was just me and a couple of scientists on the other end of the island, some security that would circle the island looking for poachers. This is the scientist that I was working with, and he's looking for those radio tags that might have fallen off those elephant seals and gone on the beach. There's them collecting the tags, collecting the data. And that's me. This is me snorkeling in the water with the elephant seals. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the whole reason why I was excited to go down to the San Benito Islands. I had plenty of images of them documenting, I had plenty of images documenting the work that they were doing with the tags. But when I was offered to go down there and do some more, I jumped at the opportunity because I knew this place was the place to get in the water and get some underwater photos of elephant seals. This is a seal that, unlike other pinnipeds, seals and sea lions, they swim far offshore and are very difficult to photograph underwater. So this is me jumping in the water with them all by myself. No scuba gear, nobody around me. Well, of course, except for a friend of mine who was taking some of these pictures while I'm being stupid and doing this all by myself. And I'm snorkeling with them. And these are big females, 1,000 pounds or more. No males there, thankfully. They're twice as large. But it took me several days to get these animals comfortable with me. When they're on land, they don't care. I walk right by them, they fall asleep, they don't mind me at all. But in the water, they're a little bit more cautious of my presence. So it took several days for them to start getting closer and closer. It was a little boring, and this is me being bored and not waiting for them to come in the water, but me going back up on land. And I was able to, there's what's called a split shot in underwater photography. Crawl up onto the beach and get images like that where half are in the water and half are on land. But eventually, after as good 3.5 days, I had one female that finally got curious, and she started coming up to me and creeping around some rocks and taking a look at what I was. And I was able to pop off a few images. This is the first image that I was able to get of her down there. And after that, she got a little bit braver, and I was able to get a few more very unusual images. Another one. And this female, you don't have a sense of scale here, is about 1,000 pounds. So pretty big animal. And while I was doing this, another female snuck up behind me and decided to jump on top of me. And I sank very quickly down to the bottom of the lagoon there. I was in 5 feet of water, pinned, and I was struggling and almost drowned. But luckily, the elephant seal decided to jump off me or get off me, and I was able to surface and breathe again. But for whatever reason, she wanted to figure out what I was and jumped on top of me in the middle of the shoot. But this is the final and my favorite image of the shoot that I got down there. Hopefully, we'll go back one day and have an opportunity to photograph the big bulls with the large proboscises that are, a couple tons in weight. So. And then from there, another project. I'm just going to kind of walk through a couple of projects that I did. Again, after I decided to get into photography and work with and in the sciences, but from a photographer's perspective. And this is one that's close to home that I did with the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. I was documenting some of the deep sea research that they were doing, but most importantly, some of the weird, strange, bizarre animals that we have right offshore here in Monterey Bay. One of the things that actually makes Monterey Bay so unique is the submarine canyon that we have here, which starts about a 1/4 mile offshore, and unique in the sense of its biodiversity and the ability for such an institute to do deep sea research so close to shore without having to go miles or even trek for days to get to these deep areas to study deep ocean environments. The Monterey Submarine Canyon is the 3rd largest submarine canyon in the world. And this is how they do it, using tools like this. This is an unmanned submersible. This one's called the Bentana. All kinds of stuff on there that I can't explain, but that's a photo of what they use to go down and study and sometimes collect. This is one of the pilots that is in the belly of the vessel that's used to bring the submersible out and deploy it in the oceans. Another view of the pilot working with his joystick and literally flying it through the water column with all of the cameras, looking at all the screens with all the cameras on the submersible. Another view. And then I would photograph, let's say 30% of this portfolio I created are animals that are alive. And then the rest of it are animals that I exhumed from the collections of people at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, and then the neighboring school, Moss Landing Marine Labs. So thanks to both of them for giving me access to this stuff, but we would photograph all kinds of weird, bizarre, again, animals found right here in the Monterey Canyon. This is the fangtooth. Last one was a dragonfish, larval snipe eel, deep sea crab, a dragonfish, that thing hanging off of its chin that bioluminesces to attract prey as it's hunting through the water column. This is an adult snipe eel, unlike the larval species, the larval specimen I showed you earlier. Hatchet fish, strange things, right? Polychaete worm, deep sea worm. The teeth on this one, so bizarre. The viper fish, one of my favorites of the collection. Close up of the viper fish. And then there's some color images that I photographed from a similar project I did with Marine Institute in Louisiana, pulling specimens up from the Mississippi Canyon. All these animals are alive. Deep sea cucumber, translucent. You can see all of its organs and its guts, digestive tract, etc. Beautiful. Deep sea squid. This is a sea cucumber, another sea cucumber, translucent. You can see all of its digestive tract. This one that's this umbrella that you see, or I don't know what you call it, sitting out there. That's what it uses to swim through the water column. And then
Jason?
this, yes.
We have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the chat, Donna asked, how deep is the canyon off of Monterey Bay?
I think its deepest point is like 2.25 miles down, if I'm not mistaken. So quite deep.
Okay.
Yeah. And then this here, this is a, well, cousin of your garden variety pillbug. This is an isopod, however, different than your garden variety pillbug. This one is about a foot long, very big, very cool looking animal. A worm, yeah, no, this is a flatworm. And I said I was going to do a technical presentation. I want to show you at least a couple of slides here that talk a little bit more about underwater photography. Because there is a lot that goes into it. This is a anatomical view of an underwater housing and all these housings are, they are very technical, and each one is engineered specifically for a specific camera. So every Nikon model, every Canon model, Sony model has a housing dedicated to it. And each one is, again, engineered specifically for that camera to access all of the buttons, the knobs, and the dials. So when you have a housing for underwater photography, one of the great things about it is that you have all the functionality that you normally do on land.
Jason,
Yeah.
when you step away, we lose you.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
We're not hearing you when you step away from the screen.
I thought my mic was portable. I guess it's not. My apologies. So I'll stay put. Got it. So this is gives you an idea as to all of the things that go into designing an underwater housing. But in addition to a housing, we have to have arms to hold up our strobes if we're bringing light with us underwater, which brings us the color, and et cetera. And of course, we have to have the strobes as well. But that's not all. There's ports involved. There's wires involved that connect the strobes to the housing. There's a lot of stuff that you have to deal with gear-wise, and it's very heavy when you travel. So I'm accustomed to paying my baggage overage fees. That said, I want to kind of walk you through now just some images and some techniques that I do when I'm shooting underwater to give you an idea as to the kinds of things that I think about when I'm shooting, and I'll get more critter specific with this. But I'll start by talking about some creative approaches. And one creative approach here is using rear curtain sinks. Not all cameras. Canons have a bit of a problem doing this kind of thing, but rear curtain sinking is the technique where I could drag the shutter. But in this particular case, where I have movement throughout the frame, but even a lot of stuff that looks still and sharp, incorporating a slow shutter with a flash, with a strobe. So I get both effects happening simultaneously. This is done with the shark in the Bahamas. Same effect here. And I'm kind of panning my camera across as I'm doing this, which gives it that streak across the frame horizontally.
Jason, we have another question.
Yeah.
Have you or other photographers documented illegal fishing? For example, ship from China doing illegal fishing?
I have done a little bit of that, but it's been well documented actually by other photographers that are dedicated and have the funds to do the work, while documenting conservation issues. But it's been well documented, absolutely. Yeah, underwater and above, absolutely. So same technique here, working with salmon up in Northern California, and this as well. Slow shutter, a little bit of strobe. Back to the Bahamas. This is a lemon shark swimming in front of me. More lemon sharks. salmon again. And a kelp crab up in British Columbia. This is a really strong pan with a really strong flash, but I wanted everything in the center of the frame nice and sharp. And here I'm doing it with a school of what's called glassfish in Indonesia, filling the frame. And some sea lions in Central California. A rockfish here in Monterey Bay. I love doing this kind of slow shutter dragging, especially with wildlife, because it has that feeling of movement and fluidity. And, you know, the ocean is alive and it's always moving and it's very energetic. So using that technique is something I really love to do with the animals down there. This is me and kind of introducing something I just started playing with a couple years ago, and I did it for the first time in the Bahamas working with sharks. This is me in the Bahamas, about 20 feet of water, looking up, got a whole school of reef and lemon sharks swimming above me while people on the boat are throwing fish at them. And on purpose, I told them, please, yes, keep throwing fish at the sharks right above me, as silly as this might sound. But the technique that I started playing with was we're doing multiple exposures. I love the silhouettes that were above me, and I just started playing with multiple exposures. This particular one didn't come out the way I wanted, but I did it over and over and over again, and finally ended up with some that I liked. The idea came from really initially as I saw a painting from a guy named David Kinsey that he did as part of a campaign to make awareness or increase awareness for shark finning. And he had this beautiful painting that was red and blue and just kind of a mosaic of sharks intertwined with one another. And I thought very hard of how I could create that with a camera. And the idea came up of how to do it with multiple exposures. So played with it. And this one is one of my favorites. Here we have two, a yin and yang sort of, almost yin and yang sort of pattern here. And this one was my favorite of the bunch. Again, these are 3 multiple exposures, some silhouettes, a lot of texture, really pretty effect. I have some large prints of this one up in the gallery right now. Another thing underwater photographers have to deal with or have to master, I don't play with this as much as I used to, is working with models, especially if a goal is to ever sell any of your work and sell any to magazines and so on. You have to learn to work with models underwater. And it's not easy to do. It's not easy to train a model to work with you properly. It's not easy to position them properly. We can't communicate like we do above water. But it's difficult to do. So here's one, the one that's easiest to do, or say that the technique that's easiest to do is if you have the model as a secondary subject. In the background, in the water column, and then you have some kind of a foreground subject. In this case here, it's these sea fans or gorgonians that's sticking off the side of the wall here. And then the divers in the background, sometimes he or she can have a light, sometimes he or she doesn't need one, and then just have them be a silhouette and use them as a secondary subject. This one, which is not as aesthetically pleasing, but great for selling images to, say, diving magazines or travel magazines, is the one where the diver is close up and you can see his or her face and her eyes, etc. Have them having a light, looking at something specific. But again, this technique here, having them fall off into the background, in this case, the diver you see doesn't have a light. Much easier to deal with. This one's taken in the Channel Islands. Believe it or not, we have plenty of color, almost tropical like here in California, especially in the southern Channel Islands. These are sea fans and soft corals found here in California. Another diver on the shipwreck in the British Virgin Islands. Same shipwreck. Here's a diver above a grouping of what are called crinoids in Indonesia. And then this is an idea I had for how to take a group photo. I had a group that I brought with me out to Mexico to photograph whale sharks. And at the end of the trip, wanted to take a group photo. And I had this idea come to mind where they all got in a circle, like a group of skydivers that I used to see, on TV and in pictures. And then I dove down. I wasn't on scuba. I just snorkeled down about 30 feet or so, looked up with my camera, made sure that sunball was right in the middle, and pop. And then this is another unique perspective of a diver, but this time looking down. And if you're in clear water, like I was in this particular case, in clear blue water, the sun, the surface of the water breaks up the sun and it goes down in these beautiful rays. And if you use a really wide angle lens, in this particular case is using a fisheye lens, it looks like as if these lines are converging into a central point. And I use this quite a bit as a technique to frame and add context to the subject underwater. And now I just kind of want to roll you through. Actually, before I do, any more questions? No?
Yes, just a moment.
Hi, Jason. I'm just curious what your camera settings are underwater with the light being so low. Are you ramping up the ISO or using your flash and not needing to do that?
Every subject, every shot is different. So this shot here that we're looking at, this is all strobe. So I could shoot this like, well, as if I'm using the flash, right? So have to adhere to the restrictions of my camera in terms of flash synchronization. So with Nikon's, it's 2/50th of a second. But I don't care that much about shutter speed beyond that because the flash is stopping the subject. Aperture becomes a consideration, because of depth of field. But other than that, this is just strobe. But if I were taking shots that have no strobe in it, and I'm just shooting ambient light, completely different approach. Then I want to think about, do I want to stop the wildlife that I'm photographing or the subject, whatever. And then I might want to shoot at 500th of a second and then use a high ISO. So like anything on land, it really just depends on the shot. And I'll talk about some settings since you asked that question from kind of image to kind of image moving forward here to give you an idea, but completely different depending on what I'm doing here. So a lot of these critter shots, as I'm just setting this next set of images up to be, a lot of these are done with flash. So ISO is not as big of a factor. Any other questions before I go back in?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
I have just a little Nikon point and shoot for underwater, and so it's pretty limited technologically. Any suggestions on how to get a split image? I just about drowned trying to get right on that surface and get that line going through the lens, the line between the surface and the underwater. Any suggestions?
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about when you put the housing underwater, the kind of case that it's in, or most importantly, what's in front of the lens? Is it a flat port? Is it a rounded port? What do you got?
Well, it's not in a casing, it's just the camera itself. So it's just a little underwater point and shoot camera.
Yeah, so in that particular case, you're just dealing with that little flat lens that's on the camera there, and getting a split shot is going to be next to impossible unless that water is really, really still and calm, and you have to go really slow. But even that's going to be challenging. To get those kinds of shots, we underwater photographers really need to have a big dome port. And when I say big, I mean like the one I use on my camera is 9 inches in diameter. And then they have them that are a foot in diameter as well. And that really helps find that line, especially if you're on the surface of the ocean, everything's kind of moving around. Other than that, it becomes pretty difficult to do. So having some kind of a dome port on front is the way you have to deal with it or do it. And then the bigger that dome port is on front, the easier that technique becomes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm searching to see if there's anyone else. Okay, I think we're good. Anybody on the chat? No?
Kathy,
Okay.
if that's you chatting away here, what's my kind of time ceiling here so I know how quickly I can need to chat?
I
run
think
through
you're
these?
doing good. About a half hour more, maybe?
Okay, great, cool. So yeah, so let's just show some weird sea creatures. This is me doing something I don't do as much anymore. And when I say sea creatures, there's a lot of focus on tiny things here. It's not all, but there's a lot of focus on tiny things. And I say I don't do it anymore because close-up photography like this, macro photography like this requires a lot of patience that I just frankly don't have anymore. And I tend to like the big things. I like shooting wide. I like these broad cinematic views. I'll show you more of what I mean about that later. But the tiny things do reveal part of the underwater world, which is just, for lack of a better word, amazing. It's the critters that you find down there. This is a decorator crab. So this is a crab that takes little bits and pieces of things around the ocean and on the ocean floor, and he grabs it with his claws, and he puts this mucus on it and sticks it on his back and sticks it on his arms as a way to camouflage himself into his environment. This particular crab has coral stuck to his arms, an anemone stuck to his back, other things stuck to the top of his back. It's just a bizarre mess of things that he's put on himself to camouflage, but really cool. And this, before I was talking about your garden variety deep sea pill bug, well, this is what a slug looks like in the ocean, or one of many, many, many kinds of slugs. Slugs you see in your garden are brown and very unappealing, and people just generally don't like them. But sea slugs are coveted by underwater photographers because a lot of them are so beautiful and vibrant and colorful. And there's a huge variety of slugs that you can find underwater, also called nudibranchs. So there's nudibranchs that they're all over the ocean from pole to pole. And they come in all shapes and sizes and colors. These are ones that I photographed here in California called herbacendas. These beautiful tentacles that run down their backs. This is a Dorid nudibranch called a lemon nudibranch, crawling on some bryozoan. Another one from California here. This particular one's called a Spanish Shaw. Beautiful. Clown nudibranch. This one is, where did I photograph this one? This one might be from British Columbia, now that I think of it. Another this is an Aola nudibranch. There's Aola nudibranchs and Dorid nudibranchs. This one's called a sea mouse. This one's really tiny, about the size of your pinky nail, crawling on all of those, that screen-looking thing he's crawling on are single-celled animals called bryozoan. That's a very big single cell, but that's what that is. It is crawling on a little sea mouse. Very cute little nudibranch. This is another Aola. This one is definitely shot up in British Columbia. Very cold water. And then over to Indonesia. Look at all these differences in colors and shapes. Not like what you see in your garden. This one's big. This one's about 7 inches long, shot in Indonesia. Very deep in this dive. Little bit of a bigger critter. This is one of my favorite fish. This is scarlet rockfish. Gorgeous, gorgeous colors on this guy. And yeah, you got to bring strobes down if you want to represent or translate the underwater world with color like it can show. You've got to bring strobes down with you. Close up of a little hermit crab crawling on a sea sponge in British Columbia. Oh, a Puget Sound king crab. We can't, no sense of scale here, but this is close up. You can see the two orange eyes there sticking out, and those tentacles coming out, or the antenna coming out from the center right above its mouth there. These crabs are really big, actually. Close up of an anemone, green anemone here in Monterey Bay. And an octopus, you can see his eye and the siphon there underneath, right underneath the eye. The siphon is what the animal does to breathe or to siphon water out and have water come back in and over its gills. A rose star, also from British Columbia, on a sea sponge. And here's a sea nettle found here in Monterey Bay. We get huge swarms, are also called smacks, of jellyfish here in Monterey Bay. As you can see, they are just come in the thousands when they come in, and they do sting. Yes. Fortunately, I'm covered from head to toe when I'm diving in Monterey because it's so cold. That doesn't mean I don't get stung. They get caught on my gear. Tentacles will brush across my regulator and my face sometimes. And as I'm taking my gear off, because it's on my gear, I'll get some on my hands and arms. They do. It's like a bee sting. They don't kill you or anything, but it gives you a pretty good wallop. Another view of that. That's scarlet rockfish. This one from head on, beautiful. Here's a little shrimp with an egg sac on its back, on the top of its back, right behind its eyes. Those are all eggs that you see there. And a close up of a pretty little buffalo sculpin. Don't you want to kiss it? This one's adorable. This is a, oh God. I can't believe I forgot the name of this fish. It's one of my favorite little fish to photograph. But this super tiny animal, probably the size of half of your pinky, really, really tiny. I'll come back to it. I can't believe I forgot the name of this. Very cute little fish. Crab on top of some soft coral, British Columbia. A flatfish. Yes, they have eyes on top of their head. When they lie flat on the ocean floor, they have either born with an eye on either side of their head, just like any fish. But as they grow older and learn to lie flat on the ocean floor, that one of those eyes migrates to the other side of their head. Pretty weird, isn't it? But pretty cool looking animal at the same time. And here's another a fish in Indonesia, that red or pink underneath its belly there is a kind of trumpet fish with an urchin behind it in the background. That's what all those lines are. As a sea urchin. That's an egg sac underneath the fish there. Crab tucked into an anemone. A filefish, same, hanging out an anemone. A cowfish. Just gets weirder and weirder down there, ladies and gentlemen. This is a crocodile fish. This is not a tiny one either. This one's probably a good 2 feet long. And I've had them eat my strobes before. Devil scorpion fish. This one will sting you pretty bad. Bizarre looking animal, isn't it? Reef squid. Another one of that scorpion fish with a little bit more light, not so abstract. But those adaptations that this animal's involved to have to camouflage itself over the years, those leafy appendages to blend into the environment. So amazing. And a little shrimp on top of a sponge. Look at that. Another example of how the animal can blend into its environment structurally as well as with color. Another crab. More bizarreness. This is a hairy frogfish, and that thing on top of its head that you see there is a little angler, like we saw with that deep sea animal that can bob around and go up and down to attract prey. These are ambush predators. So he just waves that thing back and forth. But here I'm backed off a little bit. I wanted to have that shot to show you that lure that those animals use. But what a bizarre looking and beautiful looking animal. Hairy frogfish. This is another kind of frogfish. There's lots of species of frogfish like there are nudibranchs in the ocean. This one's pretty big. Another species of frogfish. Backlit with a strobe. I just put a strobe directly behind him. This animal is, really black. So I had to get creative in finding a way that I could light it up and see the texture of its face without it sort of absorbing all of the light like black velvet. It was really hard to photograph. Another one. And yet another one. In this particular case, you can see that rim lighting on the edge of his face. I had a dive guy sit behind him with a dive light and shine it right behind him. It's like you do with a hair light in a studio to light up this guy. And scorpion fish is what this is. and some more jellies. This one was photographed up in Alaska, another sea nettle, and some moon jellies from the Inside Passage in Southeast Alaska. Same as this one here and here. One of the things that I do love to photograph up there, as well as in California, are salmon. I showed you a couple of salmon pictures earlier. I'm talking about rear curtain sinking. This particular one was a fun shoot because this image is not my favorite of the sequence here. But I crawled up, and it was not easy, by the way, crawling up this creek. You have to start at the mouth of the creek, crawl your way up there, fight the current, and finally get to yourself into a spot where the salmon are kind of bottlenecking, so you can place yourself in front of them. That was the technique I was using. I finally did it. Here's a male and a female together here, and I was able to hunker myself down, get these animals kind of hovering in front of my dome and get them comfortable with me. And they got so comfortable with me. This is a nice shot of the male and female. See the difference between one with and without the hump on its back. They got so comfortable with me that the salmon was seeing its reflection in my dome and decided to get a little territorial and started biting my camera dome over and over and over again. It was pretty funny, but allowed me obviously to stay close to these animals. And then here I started dragging that shutter a little bit, slowing it down. Mouth open, looking at its reflection in my dome, being a little territorial, pretty funny. And here, this is probably one of my favorite, the sequence. So I have my shutter a little bit slow, a little bit of strobe on there. Very nice. Look at this moon jellies that this is one of my favorite dives up in Alaska. We would go to this place at Baranof Island where we'd see moon jellies in the hundreds of thousands, swarms, huge swarms of jellies. These guys don't sting though at all. And then of course, giant Pacific octopus, camouflaging themselves in the soft corals. And giant Pacific octopus, they're big. They wingspan to wingspan can get a couple 3 meters. One of my favorite dives is right here. I had this animal all to myself in a place called Dillon Rock in the Inside Passage. All the divers went back on the boat because we had no luck looking for an octopus. And then just before I was about to give up, I came across this girl and she was just crawling all over the place. I looked around for some diver buddies, but they left.
Jason, I have another question for you.
Yeah, sure. This is my favorite of the sequence here. And my friend even got a tattoo of this on his arm. Yeah, go ahead. Question.
What camera setting do you use to get the black background?
Oh, I forgot to answer that, didn't I? So black backgrounds, let me see if I can have, yeah. So black background right here, or I'd say in this case, darker background, right? Versus something like this that has ambient light. This is really just a matter of darkening your ambient light versus your strobe. And the most or easiest way to do that is to stay focused on your shutter speed. Take your shutter speed and darken it or make it faster without playing with your aperture. And that will most of the time do the trick. If you hit that ceiling of your flash synchronization speed, and it's still you're still getting too much ambient light in as opposed to strobe light, then you can play with your ISO and bring that down or aperture as needed. But really it's all about shutter speed to control your ambient light and aperture to control the light coming from the flash as a general guideline.
Thank you.
So from here, I was slow enough, and you can see I was slow enough to where I have some shutter drag in here. The background behind him is a bit blurred, but he's sharp because of that strobe. Slower shutter speed.
And were those white balloon eggs?
No, those are metridiums. That's a kind of an anemone that you can't see plumed out, or their tentacles are not out because, well, this animal's crawling all over the place and crawling on top of them. So as soon as the metridium, this anemone senses its presence, it closes back up, and then it just looks like a white blob. So no eggs here. This animal is actually walking around this reef here, hunting, trying to find something to eat. Same with this here, crawling around and hunting. These are two different octopus, by the way. This is where I started saying this was my favorite dive. This was a dive that I did actually after this particular octopus. So this octopus this one, and then finally this one. And this was there's no, again, no sense of scale with this, but the mantle, the head, which is the siphon, the eye, and that ball behind him, that was the size of almost 2 basketballs. This is a very big octopus. And I was nervous because I was all by myself with this guy, and these guys are strong. If she wanted to, she could easily come out and just crawl on top of me and pull my mask off. My hand is going to be, she started doing that, the first thing I would do is take my hand and put it on my regulator and not let go. I would stop taking pictures and I would keep my hand on my regulator, because if she wants to, she can yank that regulator out of my mouth and I'm by myself. And that's the last thing that I want. And they do sometimes. They're not vicious or anything. They're just kind of curious. They're really smart, curious animals. So they investigate divers a lot. Oh, this is a fun one. This is us swimming with stellar sea lions, really big pinnipeds, also up in the Inside Passage, Alaska, British Columbia area. These are the juveniles, though. These are not like California sea lions that you see on Pier 39 in San Francisco or here in Monterey Bay, where a bull sea lion here is 700-800 pounds. These juveniles are close to 1,000 pounds, and they're not shy. They swarm you underwater. And bite you and nip at you playfully, I should say. It's some people, it's not for everybody. Some people, they get a little overwhelmed by the sea lions doing this. I think it's so much fun to do. And yeah, they bite you a little bit, but you get these great encounters with these guys. Here's this guy coming right up to my dome and peeking in. Really a lot of fun. This is a friend of mine, Susan, that however, she got pretty good on the head, got a little cut on her head. That's from biting you. They do bite you, but a lot of fun. And then here are some sharks in the Bahamas. Sharks are definitely one of my favorite things to photograph. I've grown to just love them over the years. These are a couple of reef sharks, still with strobes. This is a tiger shark. The goal when we go to the Bahamas is to swim with both tiger sharks and with hammerhead sharks. However, these are bulls. And this is the shot that you can see I have in my background. And I should say something about this real quick, because this is an image that I took actually just in February. And just after this image was taken, I probably had the scariest encounter that I've ever had in the oceans with any animal. And that was because of this animal here, the bull shark. The bull shark is considered the most, for lack of a better word, dangerous shark in the ocean. The 3 most dangerous are whites, tigers, and bulls. But bulls act very different than the other 2 that I've mentioned there. Bulls are kind of snappy animals. And why I say I was the most scared is, well, I'll say this. First of all, I've had my camera housing in the mouth of many sharks, a lot of tiger sharks. When I say in the mouth of, sharks they're actually, I don't consider them very dangerous. I don't consider them aggressive. The whole thing about sharks being dangerous is a total myth for the most part, but they get a lot of media attention. Jellyfish kill way more people every year in the ocean than sharks do, but you never hear about how deadly they are. And that's because they just don't look as menacing, and they don't have the big teeth, and they don't have all of the history around them regarding the lore and the stories and the tales about the man-eating animals down there. But that said, why I was the most scared is, like I said, I've had my camera housing in the mouth of many sharks. But I've never been scared, because the sharks were always just kind of, well, curious. They were investigating. They wanted to know what I was. And I never got a sense that they were aggressive in any way. They were just kind of checking me out. Sharks, when you're down at their level, when you're on scuba, you're not something on the surface, a surfer or some kind of flotsam sitting on the surface for them to investigate to see if you're food, because sharks scavenge. When you're on their level, they do not treat you like a food source, and they're just like any other fish. Really, just like any other fish. So 15-foot tiger sharks have come up to me, opened their mouth. What are you? I put my housing there as a way to kind of just block between me and them, but I've never felt scared about it. But this last trip, I had a bull shark come after me, and it was the first time where I could say it was an attack. It tried to bite me and try to eat me, but it was trying to figure out if I was worth eating. And the way it did it is it was swimming by me, it looked at me, and it turned and came at me really fast. And I put my camera housing in front of me and hit it really hard, and he bit my dome shade. And then he went around me, went to the backside of me and tried to do it again. Went at me, and boom, my camera housing was there, and he bit my camera again. And my heart was pounding, and I got the hell out of there pretty darn quick. But the bull sharks are not usually in this area where we're working with tigers and hammerheads. But over the last few years, they've become more and more and more brave. It's interesting. Anyway, any questions on that? Or anything that's
Hold
like that
on,
so
let
far?
me walk around here and see anybody have a question for Jason. Yeah, just a sec. I'm walking
Yeah.
to the back. This is Bob.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, this is just a general question, sharks and the other animals. Do they seem to be disturbed at all by the flash?
No, I would say not only are they not disturbed by the flash. Well, I'm sorry. Let me speak about sharks first. Not only are they not disturbed by the flash, but when they get curious, I think one of the things that kind of brings them in is flash. Because sharks have, let me see if one of these other photos here. So you can see on the snout of this tiger shark, there's these freckles on the snout of their shark. Well, those freckles there are a thing called ampullae of Lorenzini and represent their sixth sense. And that sixth sense that they have that we do not is an ability to detect electromagnetic fields in their environment. So sharks are known for having a great sense of smell, but one of the things that they can do to also see their environment, to detect injured fishes, the frequency of an injured fish versus a healthy fish is different, is by using these electrosensory pores to see their environment. So they're sensitive to electromagnetism. So I think that the strobes bring them in. A lot of times sharks will come in, instead of like coming at me, or to see what I am, they'll go directly to my strobes and kind of mouth the strobes to figure out what they are. Interestingly enough, going back to octopus do the same thing. I think there's a warmth about them that they're attracted to. But other than that, I don't recall any times where I've experienced animals being even a little jumpy, I would say, from flash. No, not at all.
I have a couple of more
question.
questions. One is,
Yes.
where were the bull sharks that attacked you? Where were the bull sharks?
They were freaking everywhere on those dives. They were everywhere. And and I say it was unusual because I've been out there many times, and the bull sharks were always a shark that stayed away or has stayed off in the distance. And there's whatever has been going on the last few years, and I have theories, but I'm a photographer, I'm not a scientist. My theories is that there's been a lot of feeding of these animals that have been happening over the years, under the umbrella of tourism, ecotourism. And I think the bull sharks are just starting to figure out that they can get closer and closer and closer to these weird things, and those weird things are people. They're just getting braver and approaching us more. I guess I need to talk to more people about it to figure out why that is, and maybe it was just a fluke this year. But I've never had them come in like this before. I did not feel safe, bull sharks are just they're unpredictable. Tiger sharks, big 15-foot tiger sharks that I refer to as the second most dangerous. They are very predictable. They're very slow moving. They're very methodical in what they're doing and easy to work with. Not bull sharks.
Here's a technical question for you. Do you
Yeah.
typically use manual settings on your strobes or TTL?
Oh, I haven't used TTL in ever. The only time I used TTL was actually when I was shooting film with an Iconos back in the day and doing macro photography, where the strobe was filling the frame with light. But other than that, I hate using TTL underwater. It doesn't work very well. Some people do, but I'm very comfortable using strobes manually. So no TTL for me.
Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I think that is it for the questions here and on the chat. So back to you.
Okay, good. I'm gonna zoom through some of these real quick then. Let me see where I am. I'm doing okay, but I'm gonna start zooming through some of these. I just started showing a couple pictures of whale sharks. Let me show this one real quick because there's a quick story that I'll say here of this one time. Speaking of getting attacked by sharks, this was not an attack, but as I mentioned, I would take people down to Mexico to swim with whale sharks. This is the world's largest fish, and it is a shark. However, these guys are harmless in the sense that they have no teeth, like the aforementioned sharks, and they are filter feeders. So these guys come into this area in Mexico we would go to, and they'd feed on these tiny little fish eggs. Okay. But anyway, at one point I was on the side of a boat. The shark came from underneath, and with its mouth wide open, I went straight into the mouth. It didn't see me. I didn't see it. And I was in this whale shark's mouth up to my chest. Both of us were startled by it. The shark ended up not eating me, of course, obviously, but spitting me out pretty quickly, rammed me a couple times just so I could get out of its way before it started swimming away. It rammed me pretty hard. The captain on the boat, after I surfaced, was laughing his head off. I thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen, and I kind of agreed with them. But I'm living proof that whale sharks, the world's largest fish, do not eat people. So there. I'm going to zoom by a couple of these to go straight into. Here's a couple of whale sharks as well. Again, those rays coming down the surface of the water, breaking up those sun rays, creating that effect. And here's one not with a diver, but looking down on a whale shark swimming out underneath me. But I've shown you a lot of color photography, and I want to talk a little bit about really what my work looks like today, because everything that I've showed you so far, it's fun. A lot of work with strobes, a lot of color. Over the years, I've learned for my work, I just don't like doing that kind of stuff anymore. I didn't like it. When I was shooting strobes, I was shooting color. There was a lot of focus on how can I market my work and sell my work and all that stuff. And that I really just got burned out on that kind of approach over the years. And really that look, it didn't feel personal at all. So I felt for a few years very disconnected from what I was doing. And then one day I decided, to hell with this. I am not going to ever again focus on taking pictures for marketing purposes for other people, for magazines, for whatever. I'm going to do it for me. And one of the first things I did is I got rid of my strobes, and I got rid of the color, and I started shooting in black and white. And my experiences they were just much more fulfilling photographically. I felt more engaged to my work, more connected to what I was doing, because the kind of images that I was bringing back felt a lot more like the experiences that I was having underwater. And those experiences are ones that are monochromatic. When you're underwater, you don't see the color. When you're underwater, you don't see reds, blues, and greens, and all of those things that are tucked into the shadows lit up. You have a very different kind of experience. And I've always wanted to kind of, with my photography, not so much, do things that I think a magazine will like, but to translate instead this amazing, beautiful place that so long ago when I was helping elephant seals with a ponytails trying to study marine biology, was inspired to work with and spend my time with. It's a beautiful place. So doing this, I felt a lot more connected to my work. And most of the stuff here that I'm showing you now is just that. Strobes are off, monochromatic, cinematic wide angle views, not the little tiny critters anymore that represent colors. But this is showing you what I see and what I experience and what I feel when I'm diving. Here's some kelp forests in California. I skipped over that last one real quick. The kelp here in California, may have heard referred to these underwater forests. Well, it truly has that feeling when you're swimming through this stuff. These kelp stalks can grow 100 feet tall. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I'm going to zip through these real quick because I know we're running out of time. Here's some textural studies that I did. Of course, I brought a strobe back in here with this, but I needed to do this particular kind of perspective. One strobe right over the top of my housing, creating some shadows so I can create these textural effects of these corals in Indonesia. whale sharks, black and white. Manta rays circling. Again, another effect, looking down, sun rays coming through. School of fish in the shape of a heart in Mexico. Sharks, these are silky sharks. Three manta rays, not Photoshop, right place, right time, all lined up. These are big manta rays. These are the giant pelagic manta rays that are 15-foot plus wingspans. Beautiful animal. And they like the divers in Mexico. They'll seek us out because they've learned that the bubbles that we breathe, if they hover on top of us, feel good. So they treat us like a little bit of a spa at this particular place in Mexico. They seek us out. Gorgeous animal. All black manta, gorgeous. Here they are interacting with us, blowing bubbles from underneath. More tiger sharks. These are the guys that are just so easy to work with. Hammerheads. Hammerhead and a tiger in the same photo. This is a 14-foot tiger shark named Queen. Beautiful, beautiful animal. More reef sharks hovering over me. The tiger shark in the Bahamas over white sand. There's a National Geographic photographer, Paul Nicklin, taking some video of a tiger, excuse me, hammerhead on one of my shark trips. There's Paul again. 3 tiger sharks in this image. The third one's tucked behind the others. I just love the black and white wide angle view a lot more than what I was showing you before. It's all nice. I love the ocean stuff, but again, these wide angle views just do it for me. This is mostly what my work is like these days. This is from the last trip I was on in February, again, where I was hit by that bull shark. Reef shark, jacks circling around him, framing him. One of my favorite shots from that last trip. There's a bull shark right there. Stocky. See if I'm getting close to the end here, you guys. All right, getting pretty close. Abstract of some nurse shark fins. Another bull shark, high key take on this particular shot. I just played with the color channels to get that white background there. Another bull underneath the boat. Silky shark, excuse me. That's it, you guys. Thanks for letting me, I could talk about this for hours more, but that's a quick introduction to what I do. And we can open up to the floor to a few more questions.
Okay, we
that'd
have
be great.
some. We do have some. So before we clap, some people are already clapping because they really appreciate what you're sharing with us, but we do have a couple more questions.
Okay, and then after the questions, I have an offer I'd like to give the club, so we'll end with that, but go ahead.
Okay. I was just curious, do you guys, do you chum the water at all?
But with the sharks, yes. In fact, all the shark trips I've done, we are chumming the water to bring them in. And in the case in the Bahamas, we're feeding them as well. And as weird as that might sound, doing that with sharks is not the same as doing that with like bears, where we're instructed and properly instructed to not feed the bears. Without going into too deep of a conversation about this, it's not quite the same thing with sharks, even though it might seem ridiculous at first thought. But yes, we are chumming the waters. We do bring them in that way. And in this particular place, they don't do this everywhere. And they don't do it with white sharks. They're hand feeding the tigers and the hammerheads. So the wranglers are down there with us with crates of bait, and they're literally putting fish in the mouth of these big 15 plus foot, so-called aggressive animals, but a testament to the whole thing's a kind of a myth. Not that they're not dangerous. Don't go sticking your hand in their mouth, but not what they've been made out to be.
Okay. One last question, and while I'm asking it, perhaps you can drop the share. Are the
Oh,
lens?
sure.
Yeah. Are the lens that you use prime or zoom?
They are prime at this point. I say at this point because when I used to use a crop sensor, and actually before I get rid of the screen, I wanted to show everybody one more thing. When I had a crop sensor, I used a zoom wide angle lens, but no, all prime lenses. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, back to you, and you're still on the share, so you can show us what you'd like to show us.
I'll pull it off in just a second. Sorry, I talk long. That's my big fault here. But as mentioned at the beginning of this, I do own a print lab. We do metal prints, canvases, lots of paper. I do appreciate you guys letting me talk to you today, and certainly doing this remotely. So I would like to extend a bit of a thank you, and that thank you is to everybody in the club there, be it in person or on Zoom. If you want to try out what we do, I would like to at least talk to you about more what we do, make a free print for you. So the offer is a free 14 by 20 paper of your choice. We can talk to you about the papers that we have. And again, we do metals in a unique way, 11 by 16 metal on the house. If you upload files to our website, there it is there, and we can send you this by email as well as a reminder. Just type in Club Freebie in the comments section and we'll do that on the house. Two more quick slides here. If you like, please follow me on Instagram. I have two things there to look at. I'll send this by email as well because I'm going quickly. Follow me. I'd like to follow you back. Let me know that you're from the club so you can follow where I'm going. It's not just underwater these days. I go to lots of different places and would love to share it with you and love to see your work as well. And then finally, as I mentioned, as I do writing for Outdoor Photographer Magazine, here are some links to some 4-part article series that I've written. One on organization in Lightroom, one on backing up images, backup strategies to keep your stuff safe, and then most importantly, in my humble opinion, one on printmaking. It's an introduction to making prints on either your own or with a lab and starting to get some consistency from your display to your print. So that said, thanks again, everybody. I'll stop sharing here at this point.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
your
much.
time.
Yeah. I hope you can hear all the clapping.
I can.
Good. Thank you. That was really great. And what you missed not hearing us was all the oohs and ahs as you were showing all your photos. So they were really great to see.
Well, wonderful. I hope they came out okay across the internet here and they weren't too low res, but thanks again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Okay, Rachel, it's back to you.
So thank you, Jason. And so we're now going to take a 10-minute break. So feel free to get up and wander around, stretch your legs a little bit. We will start with the back announcing the winners of the March critique when we come back at 7:45. And I guess the Zoom folks can chat among yourselves. So, all right, see y'all in a few.
Check, check. Check, check. 1, 2. 1, 2, 1. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Test, 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 test.
Testing, testing,
Test, test, test.
testing 1, 2, 3.
Test, test.
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. The lazy dog. This is a test. This is a test of the emergency broadcast system. Yeah. If this were a real emergency, you would be experiencing headache, nausea, fatigue, purple spots, and blurred vision.
Test, 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 test. This is such a great picture. I love it.